We'll just roll through it first of all. And when we roll through, we're going to see that in task 2, we have a massive amount of information to play with. Now that massive amount to play with is, well, what have we got? We've got some credit scoring system, some more credit scoring system. It goes on and on. We're given stuff about risks. And then, whoa, we've got some financial statements. So we've got a statement of financial position and we've got a statement of P&L. Okay, so lots and lots to play with here. Now, based on that, what have we got to do? Complete the table below by calculating the key indicators to 2 decimal places. Well, remember 2 decimal places because I promise you that the examiner will remember them. So let's make sure that we don't make any foolish mistakes. So we've got to do it for 20x5 and 20x4 for Bathrooms Limited. Then we have to rate the company using the credit rating scoring system. Now, okay, this is a big question. There's a massive 22 marks available. So this is one of those make or breaks that you should get right. If we look at it from the context of what the examiner has said, when we look at task 2, it is one of those tasks that you are expected to get right. And like so much of what the AAT says, it's not about the skills that is the issue here. It is about you getting the right answer in the format that they want, in the box that they want, doing all of those detailed things correctly. So, okay, let's have a look at what we've got to fill in here. If we look at the box we've got to fill in, we've got an operating profit margin, we've got interest cover, we've got the current ratio, and we've got gearing. So we've got 4 measures, and I don't know about you, but the way I look at it is this. We're told to do all of this stuff, but to my mind, I'm looking at saying, well, let's just separate it there. Because we can't do the latter before the former. So let's just focus on making sure that we calculate those key indicators properly. So, based on that, let's first of all try and establish how to calculate ratios. And I would be delighted if you could help me in doing this. So let's go below here. And my first question to you is, how do you calculate an operating profit margin? Any thoughts from your perspective? How do you calculate an operating profit margin? Over to you. I can see that we're all relaxing this Friday. It looks like I'm going to have to help you here, which I'm slightly worried about, me helping you. I don't think it would be a surprise for us to suggest that there is the operating profit up top. Amazingly, the examiner said to me in his examiner's comments that one of the big issues here is that you tend, as a cohort in total, to just pick any old profit that you like. So just be careful you get the right one. It shouldn't be too difficult. And when we're calculating a margin, we'd normally take sales, okay, turnover. So that's all we want to do. That should be quite straightforward. What else do we have to calculate? Well, we've also got to calculate interest cover. So, any thoughts on interest cover? How do we go about that? Well, what we've got to look at here is the profit available to pay the interest. So a profit figure, and I'm going to be a bit vague on that for the moment because we have to be very careful with the financial statements, and divide through by the interest. Now we'll firm up on the top one first of all in a moment. And then we have the joy of the current ratio, which should be the easiest thing that you've ever calculated. That's the current assets to current liabilities. And then finally, we've got gearing. Now, I don't know about you, but we've got these ratios. We haven't done anything with them yet. Could anyone tell me the issue to do with gearing? The concern that we have to have? Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you what the issue is. The issue is simply this. Gearing can be calculated in many different ways, and therefore the examiner has to tell us how to calculate that gearing measure. So let's just go back up and see whether the examiner has done just that. So nothing in the first paragraph. Then we've got all of our credit assessments. And then we've got our financial statements. There's nothing so far. So how are we going to calculate our gearing measure? Well, let's go back a bit more carefully and read the information that we've got. It's not going to be in the financial statements. Oh, sorry, I'm bouncing around a bit too quickly here. So if we go through the information above the financial statements, we don't have it in this risk area here. No, that's fine. If you look at the second box of the credit scoring system, what we've got here, because it had to be somewhere, was we're told specifically how to calculate gearing, which is total debt divided through by total debt plus equity. So that's very helpful because that allows us to understand exactly what the examiner wants. And we'll maybe discuss that in more detail if we have the time later. So we have the four measures, and I've written them up because, of course, it is fundamental to anything like this that we can churn the numbers out. Okay, so we just got to be able to do them. Now the next issue is how do we go about this? So let's look at where we find the information. So operating profit margin first of all. Let's go back to page 3. Thank you very much. And we've got the statement of profit and loss. So what we see here is that we've got our sales or sales revenue for 20x5, x4, and somewhere we should have the information with regard to the operating profit. So I don't know about you, but this is looking very straightforward. Some of this should be easy. We take the operating profit of 483, we divide through by 9870, and we end up with, I'll put it in red. For here, we're going to get what? 4.89%. There you go. One done, one out of the way. And then we've got, oh, crikey, minus 126 divided through by 8624 comes to minus 1.46. Now, the key here is not so much calculating them, but doing precisely what the examiner wanted, which was to 2 decimal places. Okay? Anyway, we've nailed 2 of the numbers, so let's slot those numbers in. Get them in the right place. 4.89% and minus 1.46%. Okay? I don't think that was difficult. I think this is something that we can do if we're well versed in doing ratios. So we've got rid of one of our ratios, and then we want to look at interest cover. And this is where we start to get rather excited by your examiner's way of playing with things. And that's simply down to the fact that the financial statements are not as tidy as they could be, or sorry, as easy to interpret as they could be when it comes to playing with things. Now, I said to you that to look at interest cover, we wanted to look at the finance cost as the denominator, and we wanted to divide that into the numerator, which was the profit. Now, here it's not difficult. We're simply going to take the operating profit. But sometimes you've got to be slightly careful because there may be a more separation. There may be a different measure of profit that the examiner wants you to use. In simple terms, we want the two measures that are adjacent to each other on the basis that we're looking at how easy it is to cover our finance costs with those funds available to do that covering. So all we're going to do here is say 483 divided by 200 comes to 2.42, I believe. Yeah, very straightforward. And 126 divided by 105. Is there a problem with what I'm suggesting here? Well, it's negative, isn't it? It's all a bit weird. Minus 1.2. You could say that there is no cover. Okay, so we have our values. Not quite sure if minus 1.2 makes any sense, but still. So we've got 2.42, or if you wish, 2.42 times, and minus 1.20 times to 2 decimal places. Remember, we were specifically asked to do that. Then we look at the current ratio. Now, if you think about it, we've been focusing on the profit and loss account, whereas the current ratio is focusing on assets. So we must go to the balance sheet. And this is where, well, from my perspective, maybe wrongly, I feel that the examiner has tried to make life as awkward as possible for you. Because you've just got to be slightly careful with these totals and subtotals that exist or don't exist to pick the right number. And it's terribly easy to pick the wrong one. So, what have we got here? Current ratio, I think that's a subtotal. Does that add up? Does that work? So what have we got there? Doing the maths, it's end digit check, it looks like it works. So the current assets, that's easy peasy lemon squeezy. But then we want the current liabilities. And the stupid thing is that we've got a subtotal for the current assets, but we don't for the current liabilities. So what we've got to do is make sure that we add together the borrowing and trade payables, because presumably those are both current liabilities. Yeah, it's just a foible of the examiner, but if I may, I'm going to slot, if we sum them together, what have we got there? We've got 466 and we've got 445. So we want to divide the top, the current assets, by the bottom, the current liabilities. And what do we get? 561 divided by 466 equals 1.20. So 1.20 is the number that we're after. And 536 divided through by 445 comes to wouldn't you warrant it? 1.20 again. So for very different reasons, we get exactly the same numbers 2 times over. Okay? So there we go. We've got these numbers. I think it's a case of simply taking those numbers and throwing them into the pro forma. So no difficulty there. We're nearly there, or at least with the first part of our answer. So 1.20 and 1.20. Now we have gearing, and remember what we said. We said it was total debt divided through by total debt plus equity. And there are many different ways of doing this. So please remember, you must go and seek out what measure there is needed for gearing. So again, we're looking at the balance sheet. And what we're going to have to do here is just be slightly careful as to what's going on. Equity, straightforward. There we go. There's equity. We can just take this number here. Yes? Debt. Well, we got this number here, and we've got this number here. Because we're told about total debt rather than long-term debt, which we could have been told, we want to add the two together. So if we add the two together, what have we got there? We've got three, I can't do the maths, that's not very clever. 2110 and 1050. So, total debt. I'm just going to write it down here because there's a little bit more fun than the previous ones. 20x5, total debt is 2110 over 2110 plus the equity, 1964, comes to, so 2110 divided through by, my brain is hurting, what's that, 4074, comes to 51.79 is what I get. And we would express that obviously as a percentage, yeah? And if we were to do the same for x4, what have we got? We've got 1050 over 1050 plus 1741. I can't do that in my head. What's that? 2791. That's not really what I should be doing, but there you go. And I got 37.62. So, we've done all the numbers. Now remember how many marks were available here. Masses of marks. So we are well on our way to success, health, wealth, and possibly even happiness. 51.79 and 37.62. Okay? Right, so we've got that far. We've got those ratios out, and that's where you've got to focus all your time. Now what we want to do is we want to say, well, look, we've got those out. Now we can focus on the second part, rate the company using the credit scoring system. So I need you to remember these numbers. Let's look at the operating profit margin. And if we look at the operating profit margin, we've got plus 4.89 and we've got minus 1.46. So now let's go back through and we'll see the credit rating scoring system. So if we look at the operating profit margin here, what have we got? Well, the first one was 4.89, wasn't it? 4.89, and I think that fits into the less than 5%. Yeah? So the score will be 0. And the second value that we have was minus 1.46, so that gives you a value of minus 5. Is everyone happy where these numbers are coming from? Yeah? So all we want to do is to slot those in. That's a rating of 0 and that's a rating of minus 5. Given that there are 22 marks here, just think how many marks we have already scored. Yeah? This is a great mark getter if we can do it. Interest cover. Look at the numbers. You've got 2.42, you've got minus 1.2. If we go up top, interest cover, 2.42. So I think that falls in here, doesn't it? Yeah, this one here gives a score of 0. And the other one was minus 1.42. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's no cover at all. Yes, minus 1.2. Yeah? So we've got 0 and minus 30 as our credit score. Then we move on to the current ratio. Remember the value, 1.2, it's the same for both of them. 1.2 is our current ratio. We have to go back up. Look at all this information here. We've got our current ratio here, and we said it was 1.2. So I don't know about you, but I'm thinking that 1.2 comes somewhere around there. And that means that for both values, bang, we're going to use minus 10. Okay? And then finally, gearing, we've got 51.79 and 37.62. Gearing here, so 51.79 is there, I think, and 37.62 is there. Yeah? So we're going to have 0 and we're going to have 10. Okay, 0 and 10. So the total credit remaining, if we sum them, is going to be minus 10 and, I can't do the maths, minus 35. I don't know about you, but for 22 marks, that is pretty generous. There's a lot to play around with. We've got to make sure we do it in order, step by methodical step, but 22 marks for that is not bad indeed. So, we've managed to get our ratios out. We've managed to interpret the ratings. And of course, the more questions you practice of this ilk, the better you will become at precisely that sort of thing. Okay? Now, once we've got there, then we're told, based on the results of your credit rating and using the table above, recommend whether the requested credit limit should be given to bathrooms. So there's only 2 marks here, and to be frank, we'd like to get everything right, wouldn't we? We really would like to get everything right. But scoring 22 for doing relatively little is the thing that I'm far, far, far more interested in. Okay, maybe I'm being too cynical in my old age. But let's get this right. We're given a table up here. And on the left hand it has the rating, and on the right hand it has the decision. Yeah? We're missing something, aren't we? Okay? Because the decision is based on whether it's very low or something like that. And we don't know that. So presumably we've missed something. And that's the issue with these sort of questions. There is so much information to play with. It's terribly easy to get slightly lost. So let's just go back. In simple terms, we've used that, haven't we? Yeah, we've used that part. Okay? We've used that part. Is there anything that we haven't used? Oh! Can you see that maybe it's quite useful for you to go through and think, well, hold on, why is that box there if I don't have to use it? So presumably it has a good use. So what we're told here is we're told the relative risk given the aggregate score. Okay? So what was the aggregate score that we had? The aggregate score was minus 10 and minus 35. So when we talk about our relative risk, what we're saying is that it is medium risk today, that's X5, whereas it was high risk in the past, X4. And given that we've got the medium risk today and the high risk before, presumably what we can do is go back to the information that we've got here. Now, I'm going to put you out of your misery. I'm simply going to tell you that that is the option because you've got to read each and every one of them. And if that's the option, what decision do we make? Bang! And if that's the case, we've got to request latest management accounts and defer the decision. So, we've just looked at 24 marks of your assessment, a massive assessment task. What did the examiner say about your ability to do just this? Well, simply he said, you could do the ratios in the main, but you messed up the gearing. But you've got to be very careful to make sure that you put the right stuff in the right box. And to make sure that you do put the right stuff in the right box, what is the one thing that you are going to promise me that you are going to do in the exam? No, you're not supposed to cheat. That's a very bad idea. What you're going to promise me that you're going to do is that you must practice this sort of thing. If you practice this a couple of times in the exam, you know that you are going to be successful. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it useful. Good luck. See you again soon.